Hey, and welcome back, or Benvenidos to Tech and Tequila, the podcast where tech innovation meets bold living and smooth sipping. I'm your host, Kat Lopez Shelby, your go-to techie chica, trusted tech advisor, local voyager, Latina entrepreneur, and of course, yes, your resident tequila enthusiast. So if you're new here, welcome to the familia. I'm super excited that you joined us today. I hope someone referred you, but if not, hey, and you found us on your own, welcome. If you're a regular, you already know we blend the hard truths of business tech with a splash of mindset, and we pour a whole lot of fun in it. We make sure that when you are ending your day, you're grabbing that lovely tequila drink to savor and enjoy versus grabbing it because your tech is making you go, "Arr!" and just want to scream. We don't want you to have to scream because of your tech. That is what we strive for. And today is a little special because I am flying solo. If you have been here before, you know I do a lot of these episodes with my fellow channel managers, fellow trusted tech advisors, mindset coaches. But today I'm flying solo and we are going to dive into a couple of things. One of the topics is why cybersecurity is more a layered approach, kind of like a layered cake, or like you're, getting ready in your SWAT gear. Also, some of the clients that I've been working with lately have been working on their PCI compliance. So we're going to touch base on that. And we're going to have a quick mindset minute on kindness. And of course, would we be Tech and Tequila without some fun tequila facts that maybe you didn't know, maybe you haven't heard before? So grab your glass and let's get into it. So of course, where would we be on Tech and Tequila without some fun facts? So let's start on some fun facts here about Tech and Tequila. So here are 5 fun facts to spice up your sips. Just in case you didn't know, tequila is technically a type of mezcal, but it's only made from the blue agave and only in specific regions. So primary Jalisco. And by the way, just in case you're curious, while tequila is technically a type of mezcal, not all mezcal is tequila. So ponder that. I think it's very similar to sparkling wine versus champagne, kind of in a roundabout way. Also, fun fact for you, blue agave takes 6 to 8 years to mature. That is some dedication. Let me tell you, you got to give it time. You got to let it sit there and get all ready so you can make some amazing tequila from it. There are 5 official tequila categories. In case you didn't know, there's Blanco, Joven, Reposado, Añejo, and Extra Añejo, each with its unique taste and profile. And also, I'm sure you know that a Blanco looks very different from a Reposado. So check into why that is. That's some fun, give you some little things to Google today. And in case you didn't know, those mujeres making some bold moves in the tequila industry, launching brands, running distilleries, and bringing fresh energy to the industry, which every industry can use a new and fresh take. But hey, what about tequila? That's very exciting. I love it. And you know that we have highlighted some amazing female-owned, female-made brands in the past, like Casa de Dragones, and of course, some that are co-founded by females, like, we've had Pantalones recently, which was co-founded by Camilla Alves McConaughey, as well as, of course, Matthew McConaughey. And of course, good tequila is meant to be sipped and not slammed. If your face scrunches up, that is not a tequila of quality. Now, there sometimes can be a little bit of a burn afterwards, but it should not make you make ugly faces or want to pound that bad boy back. Good tequila is meant to be sipped, just like a good mezcal is meant to be sipped. So the next time you sip with reverence. Tequila is an art form. And speaking of art, let's get into talking about how to protect your business. Now, I know I talked about, and I feel like I've talked about it a lot, but when you want to think about protecting your business, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, you want to think about it as a layered cake approach, Or like, let's say you're gearing up and let's say you're putting your SWAT gear on, or I don't know. I guess another thing would be to say, like, you are getting ready to go hunt some deer. You're going to put your big red, not red, orange, bright orange, just like my shirt, vest on. You're going to make sure you got all the things. So let's talk about it. So here's a couple of things that I want you to think about, and I'd like you to know when you think about cybersecurity as a layered cake. Number one, it's not a donut. It's not a brownie. It's layers, many, many layers. So first off, let's talk about some did you know stats that just recently came out. And these are all from IBM, Verizon, one's from the World Economic Forum. And they're just some stats to keep in mind. So 83% of organizations have experienced more than one data breach. And I think, as we have talked about several times, here's the thing. Hackers, people in general, they like to go for stuff that's easy. So hackers come back if you leave the door cracked. The other thing is, if you allow, like, let's say you have an incident and you don't tighten up your security posture, or let's say you pay the ransomware, which, by the way, there's a lot of things to think about when you do that. 9 times out of 10, they're going to try to hit you again. They're going to come back. The other thing is the average cost of a data breach, and this might cause you pain, in 2023 hit $4.5 million. Now, this, of course, includes lost time, reputation, and legal fees, and any type, it doesn't say specifically in here, but like remediation and things that were put in place to fix these things. I went to an event a couple of months ago called Save the Data that was put on by Data Assured. Took me a minute to think of that. But one of the things is it walks you through an actual breach event, a real life breach event. And it shows you like how much time it took, what the costs were. It takes you through the whole thing. And what to me was fascinating about it was the thought process, especially because it's taking you through this event that's happened with a company that retails not only in the US, but retails in the United Kingdom. So the added things about thinking about, oh man, I sell to England or I sell over here. Additional security do you need? Like, what do you think? And of course, now this one should come as no shocker to anyone who's listened to several of these episodes. In fact, we talked about this on Coro when we just had Emilio Torado on. But 95% of breaches are caused by, you guessed it, human error. That's right. I want you to think weak passwords. Maria, John, whoever, Karen, who is like, ooh, let me get that free t-shirt or that free gift card, phishing emails. And of course, just overall not having a definitive cybersecurity posture. The other thing is, this one hurts me. It hurts me a lot because small businesses are 3 times more likely to be targeted. And you want to know why? That is because they're seen as low-hanging fruit. So you want to think about this. How hard is it to get in to a small business versus, per se, an enterprise that has this huge budget for its cybersecurity posture? And of course, this is a fun one. A ransomware attack happens every 11 seconds. Every 11 seconds. So while we're on this podcast, there have been, goodness, that's a lot. Quite a few, right? And they're gunning for small and medium-sized businesses right now. So let's break it down. This is all food for thought. We gave you some stats. Now let's talk about, how do you create that layered approach? So I always talk to my clients about, doing something is better than nothing. And I kind of a little bit disagree with the layering of this, but I will tell you, this is kind of the traditional layering that you'll see. So of course, layer 1 is going to be your antivirus and your firewall. So think of them like your gatekeepers. Like, let's say when you're going out and if you're doing door to door, this is the person at the front office. It's like, you're not getting back there. You're not talking to them. This is the person when you call that says, nope, no, you're getting voicemail. So you better leave a good voicemail, right? The second layer, of course, is going to be your password managers, your multi-factor authentication. And this is what you want to think about. Like, I personally have worked with several companies that either did not have MFA, multi-factor authentication, set up on some of their social media accounts. So let me tell you, for some businesses that really like, that is how they get the information out there. This is extremely costly because it took a lot of time to get back. Some of them include some things that I don't necessarily agree with, but hey, you know what? They got it taken care of, paid a pretty penny, got some of their stuff back. But if you want to prevent it, let's set up our multi-factor authentication. Let's use password managers. Let's make sure, even if the software, if whatever it is not asking you to change your password, you are changing it. And let's make sure we're not using the same password for multiple things. Like, your banking password is different from the password for your email, and your email password is different for the password for everything else. We're not going to talk about it, but I had an executive director of a nonprofit that once we ran their dark web scan and we looked, their password was leaked for like all these things. I would tell you another story, but that would be an after hours discussion of some of the things where I have run dark web scans on clients and found out how their passwords were linked. Just think for a second, think about those. And of course, this is kind of like, I almost think this third one is table skates, and that is regular updates and patches, right? And I want to say now, it was a couple of years ago, but HP told Apple, hey, we realize that there's this like opening that we're going to patch. And when it patched, HP patched it on the back end for their devices. All of a sudden, I had all these customers that had Apple computers calling me like, hey, we can't get our printer to connect anymore. And I'm like, well, did you run the patches? Have you done the updates that it's requested? Because I know, we all know those people who are like, if they could, they'd be running like Windows, 2.0, Windows 95 or whatever, and they would never update. But there's a reason to do regular updates and patches. Don't be sleeping on that software maintenance. If it says run overnight, run those bad boys overnight. Get them taken care of. And of course, layer 4, we're just going to like baseline touch this, because a deeper discussion needs to be had about creating immutable backups, things like that. But having backups both local and on the cloud, because you want to build redundancy. Because what you want to have a good understanding about is two things, which is, if we go down, if we have an event, what does it cost me during my downtime? And how quickly can I recover and get back up? I recently went to a training, and one of the solutions that was there, one of the suppliers, right, was talking about the fact that they can generally get someone back up within 30 minutes to an hour and run them out of their location while they're getting everything restored. And that's why I said this one takes a little bit of a deeper dive, where we would need to talk about what immutable backup is. What does that look like? And let's also talk about, if you are backing up locally, you have to think about, let's say we're in Texas, right? And I want to say we just hit tornado wet season, but it's not just about having a cybersecurity breach. It also can be about something like less likely flooding, but during hurricane season in certain spots like Houston, having flooding, God forbid, having your building burned down, things like that, all of those things you want to think about. And this is where I kind of disagree, because as per the stat we talked about earlier, that 95% of breaches are caused by human error. That's right, human error. That's human behavior. How do you train your employees? How do you onboard your employees? During one of the recent episodes with Emilio Torado talking about Coro, we talked about this, because they offer training and they do phishing simulations. Whew, that was a hard word for me today. But the big thing is that you want to train your employees to not proofread. I am super guilty of proofreading emails. I'm the best and the worst at it, but to make sure you're really deep diving in. If all of a sudden you get an email that's unexpected and say, you need to change your Microsoft password, or you need to change your iTunes password, or, hey, it's the CEO is asking you to buy $400 or $500 iTunes, and that's absolutely out of the regular, then, look, where's that email coming? What's going on? And then secondly, do you have where if someone has a question about something, there's a spot to send it, or there's a way, I would say use the term remediate, but to flag it, I guess, is a different term to utilize. These are all things to really think about. So the bottom line is every business, no matter whether you're a solo entrepreneur or, large enterprises, is you need all the layers. I've seen companies with, 3 employees have a ransomware attack. And I've seen companies that you would be shocked, number one, with very transparently the lack of their cybersecurity posture. But also I've seen companies that thought that they were completely good and they're like, oh, we don't have anything to worry about, get hit, and realize that, hey, they hadn't done their third party required penetration testing, realize that there were gaps. And so I guess for this, here's my call to action for you guys. Whether you're a solopreneur, whether you're the CTO, the CIO, whatever position you're in, or you are the designated IT person in the building, is, know the stats, know what your posture is. And I do highly, highly recommend, figuring out what your gaps are. Because even if you outsource your IT, let's say you're using an MSP, you're using an MSSP, most will actually recommend doing additional third-party testing. And the other thing to that is, and this may be kind of like a side note, not to prolong this discussion more, is know what you're paying for. I have gone into businesses when we've done tech reviews and they have thought their MSP was covering things that the MSP is like, no, you're not paying for that. We're not doing that for you. So food for thought, things to think about. Like I said, the bottom line is, every business needs to make sure that they have a good, solid cybersecurity posture. Or I also say the caveat is to educate themselves on what they have and make a path to move forward, so things to think about. Now, here's kind of a real life situation that I have had several client calls on in the last couple of weeks. And I feel like a lot of times, as a trusted tech advisor, things go cyclical. Like I will get a ton of customer experience calls where people want to evaluate different contact center services, AI agents, very, very hip right now, and trending tech. But here recently, I've had quite a few businesses calling me about PCI compliance. And it's something that I'm helping these clients actually navigate. But in case you don't know, PCI compliance is if you accept credit cards of any form, you're required to meet the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, also known as PCI DSS. It doesn't matter if you're a boutique, a food truck, or an e-commerce site, okay? And I actually ran into this a few years ago when I was working with a Harley Davidson dealership, because that was one of the specific things we talked about. And interesting enough was during their transition from their on-prem phone system to not having their on-prem phone system, because it was extremely important for them to make sure that their credit card machines stayed safe in a segmented network and to keep everything up and going. So here's some of the things that I've been doing for clients, just to give you an idea, is working with them to make sure that they're securing cardholder data, super important, implementing strong encryption, like I just said, making sure that they're segmenting networks for safety, limiting employee access, and of course, it goes back to that 95% thing again, training teams on threats, making sure that they're training their teams on what threats, things to look at. And now this has been quite a few years ago, but I'll never forget, I was actually doing a network evaluation because I was working with a company far West Texas in El Paso that was going in. They had 3 separate locations. They were updating all their internet. They were updating all this. And we walked in and every single like computer point of sale station had a bunch of sticky notes scribbled. And when we started like looking through and pulling them off, these people, something had happened and they were down and they had like names, credit card information, zip codes. And of course, my alarm bells are like ringing super loud. And so at the time with the company I worked with, we got on the phone with the business owner, with the head of their IT to have a discussion to find out like what happened, what went wrong, how do we fix this, because that, that's like writing your password down. Don't do it, people. Don't do it. Just don't do it. I'm telling you, don't do it. When in doubt, don't do it. But that's just an example of things to think about. That's obviously not PCI compliant at all, but definitely that is something that I have been working on. So and I would say a surprising thing for lots of the customers that I've been working with, I say lots, but several of the customers I've been working with is realizing, number one, that they needed to train their employees or they would be non-compliant. Also, it's not just about checking boxes. It's about ensuring that you are protecting the clients, because when you're protecting the clients, you're protecting your reputation. So if you're not sure if you're compliant, definitely check that. A lot of people, especially if they depend on Square or Stripe or all the myriad, you've got Clover and I'm trying to think Toast and all these other, and they're like, oh, they're automatically PCI compliant. Now, their point of sale system may be PCI compliant, but you also have to make sure that you're doing other aspects of it, segmenting that network out, making sure that you're keeping everything safe. And, I say safe, make sure people aren't writing credit card numbers down. All of these things make you actually PCI compliant. And just a little known fact, if you are getting notices saying that you are out of compliance, it is costing you additional money for not filing. It's a pretty simple survey that goes through and has you check some boxes, has you say, yes, we're doing this, or no, you're not doing this, which for some of my clients has been very eye-opening for them. So food for thought, something that's going on. If you have any questions, let's set up a time to talk. Shelby Tech is just a click away. So now, first and foremost, this is actually the last topic we're covering. So that was a little, but the thing is, I wanted to talk today. We recently had, of course, I'm sure I'm recording this on the 20th, May 20th, where the past president, President Biden, came out that he was diagnosed with cancer. And obviously, our thoughts, hearts, and prayers go to him and his family. But I wanted to talk about something that I think is super important right now. And that is that every single day, and this would kind of be my mindset minute for you guys, is we don't know what people are fighting in their personal lives, right? And I'm going to give you an example. One of the clients that I worked with called me in a full panic mode this week because they had been hit, didn't know how it happened. I would like to say I was the first person they called, but I wasn't. But they called me because they were overwhelmed. At this point, they were embarrassed. They were exhausted. They had no idea what had happened because they were unaware until one of their suppliers contacted them and said that they had been getting emails saying that they needed to update. So they were compromised. And this person is in full panic mode. So this definitely goes along with the theme of today. But obviously, the point of this is to, respond with compassion. So what do? We got everything set up. We restored her access that she needed. We worked on restoring and securing her systems, educated her for things to look out for the next time. And obviously, I don't have the capabilities. I'm not the legally person, but we got her in contact with the people that she needed to speak with about remediation and looking at cybersecurity insurance, which is very important. But here's the thing. Obviously that topic goes along with today's discussion, but we do not ever know what people are fighting. We don't know what's going on in their business. We don't know what's going on in their personal life. So the thing that I always think about is kindness isn't just about being soft. It's about, helping people, being strategic, creating a safety net and making sure that we are considerate. I cannot tell you, while I do not enjoy getting yelled at sometimes I know that customers just need to have that moment to release the frustration that they're having. And keep in mind, you can look at my LinkedIn profile. I have worked for a very large ISP that I can tell you right now, if you had to call them, you're probably looking getting transferred 5 or 6 times. And I still work with customers today that I worked with when I was there. And in fact, one of my clients will literally call me when they are experiencing something and be like, I know it's not you. I know it because, long story short, I did not sell them the solution, but they'll be like, we need help. I've been transferred 6 times. They can't find me. They can't figure things out. So I always say, number one, put yourself in that person's shoes, be kind when at all possible, and remember, I'm pretty techie. Not everybody's techie. And no matter what it is, like whether it's tech, whatever it may be, things might be intimidating someone else that aren't to you. So I guess my little mindset minute today is number one, always lead with kindness. Take a moment, breathe. If somebody needs to within reason, let them have their moment. Let them get off their chest what they need to get off, So at the end of the day, whether you're leading a team, working with a client, or troubleshooting some type of issue, in my case, sometimes can be a late night tech issue, choose kindness, because that is definitely an underrated superpower that we all have in this day and age, especially as business owners and especially as people who work in customer service or just in general working within the channel and within our community. So, first and foremost, I want to thank you all for listening today. I hope that you have some great takeaways from today. So let's wrap this bad boy up. Number one, we covered cybersecurity isn't a simple solution. It is a layered approach. The second thing that we covered is PCI compliance matters. Guess what? It is your responsibility at the end of the day. The other thing is, I want you to make sure that if you are looking at your tech stack, let's make sure we're not wasting money on duplicating tools. Let's get in there. Let's take a look and see what we have. And of course, last but not least, we want to lead with kindness. We want to walk into every room and we are brightening people's day, right? So if any of this episode hit home for you, do me a favor. First off, I want you to share it. And of course, like and subscribe. Also, leave a review. And of course, you can always follow us on the Instagram at Shelby Tech Solutions or on Facebook or LinkedIn at Shelby Technology Solutions. I love hearing what you guys have to say. So if you're ready to secure your business and streamline your systems, or you just want someone to geek out and tech with you, head over to www.shelbyts.com. And of course, my always call to action is schedule a tech review because I've got you. But of course, until next time, stay safe, stay smooth, and sip responsibly.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Tech and Tequila. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. To stay updated about all things tech and more, don't forget to visit us at our website, shelbyts.com. If you loved what you heard, remember to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast. Your 5-star ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help us to reach more listeners just like you. So muchas gracias again for joining us with Tech and Tequila. Thank you so much. You learned a lot about tech and maybe you had a nice drink of tequila.